Una maelezo. Tell me, kwa nini
mwandikie.
October 18th, 2025. A day the border between Kenya and Tanzania turned into something no one saw coming. Hundreds of Gen Zs flooded the crossing, not to fight, not to flee, but to make history. They carried no weapons, just phones, flags, and a voice that demanded to be heard. Their mission, simple, yet powerful, to demand the release of a politician arrested by the Kenyan police. And here's the twist. Within just a few hours, that demand was granted. The politician walked free. It was a moment that shook the region, proof that youth power in Africa is no longer a dream. It's a reality unfolding before our eyes. But here's the bigger story. This isn't just about Kenya or Tanzania. Something much larger is happening across the continent. From the streets of Nairobi to Dar es Salaam and beyond, Africa's new generation is rising, connected, fearless, and unstoppable. But first, who was this politician that united two nations' youths? And why did his arrest ignite such a firestorm? Let's find out. Saturday, October 18th, 2025. A tense morning on the Tanzania-Kenya border. A man named John Heche, deputy leader of Tanzania's main opposition party, Chadema, was on a simple journey to attend the funeral of Kenya's former Prime Minister, Raila Odinga, in Bondo. But what started as a peaceful trip quickly spiraled into something much darker. As Heche approached the Isibania one-stop border post, Tanzanian security forces stopped him. Moments later, his passport was seized, his freedom gone. Heche was taken to an immigration center, detained without explanation. No warrant, no reason, no rights. Hours later, a short video surfaced on social media. It was Heche himself, looking calm but defiant. He said the authorities had detained him and confiscated his documents. He said no one told him why. And then came the accusation that the police had completely ignored legal procedure. Within minutes, that clip spread like wildfire, and across Tanzania and Kenya, a spark had been lit, one that would soon set off something far bigger than anyone expected. I've been blocked from entering Kenya. I'm here at the border, and they want to detain me without any legal authority. I have nothing. They've taken my passport. Those were the chilling words of John Heche, recorded right at the border post. His voice was calm, but beneath it was fear. No one expected what would happen next. Within minutes, the video exploded online, spreading across TikTok, X, and Instagram. Young people from Kenya and Tanzania watched, shared, and raged. They weren't just angry, they were awakened. Questions flooded the internet. Why was he detained? Who ordered it? And what were they trying to hide? Then, something extraordinary happened. Within 3 hours, the Gen Zs mobilized. Not behind screens this time, but in the streets. In Kenya, crowds of young people marched straight to the immigration center where Heche was held. They chanted, they live-streamed, they demanded one thing, his release. And it didn't stop there. Across the border, hundreds of Tanzanian youths joined in, charging toward the same facility from their side. Two nations, one voice, divided by borders, united by purpose. Videos began flooding social media. Hundreds of locals could be seen marching toward the border facility, chanting, waving flags, shouting one name again and again. We want Heche. Release Heche. The energy was raw. The crowd warned the authorities. If the police refused to release him, they would storm the building themselves. Within minutes, a contingent of armed officers moved in, forming a barricade across the border crossing. They tried to contain the crowd, to hold back the sea of protesters, but it was too late. The people weren't leaving. They camped right there, at the gates of the immigration post, blocking roads, halting traffic, refusing to move until one demand was met: freedom for John Heche. Hours passed. Tensions grew. And then, something changed. From the Tanzanian side came word. The officers had caved. John Heche was released. When he stepped outside, the crowd erupted. Cheers, drums, singing. A wave of triumph rolled across the border. Heche had been freed, not by politicians, but by the people. As he crossed into Kenya to attend the funeral of Raila Odinga, He was greeted not just as a politician, but as a symbol of what happens when Africa's new generation refuses to stay silent. After his release, John Heche didn't waste a moment. He continued his journey to Bondo, Kenya, to attend the funeral of Raila Odinga, the man many called the People's Prime Minister. The burial was set for the next day, but the story didn't end there. Just hours after regaining his freedom, Heche made a bold claim that his arrest wasn't a coincidence. He accused the Tanzanian government, led by President Samia Suluhu Hassan, of orchestrating his detention. Was it true? No one could say for sure. But one thing was clear. Something was shifting inside Tanzania. Across the country, whispers grew louder. Opposition members, journalists, and human rights defenders spoke of a tightening grip, of arrests, intimidation, and fear. Many believed it was part of a wider plan to silence dissent before the October 29th elections. To understand why this moment feels so heavy for Tanzanians, you have to go back a few years, to 2021, when Samia Suluhu first took power. When she replaced the late President John Magufuli, the nation erupted in hope. People believed she would open a new chapter, one of freedom, equality, and reform. Magufuli had been a complicated figure. Praised for fighting corruption and fixing government inefficiency, he was also feared for his growing authoritarian streak. He centralized power, cracked down on critics, and silenced opposition voices that dared to speak out. So when Samia Suluhu stepped into office, the people dreamed of change. But 4 years later, many wonder, did the promise of freedom turn into just another cycle of control? While some Tanzanians praised John Magufuli's time in office, others, especially the opposition, saw a different side. They accused him of threatening free speech and stifling business. One of his fiercest critics was Tundu Lissu, the opposition leader who publicly called Magufuli a dictator. For that, he paid a heavy price, forced into exile. Then, in 2021, everything changed. Magufuli suddenly passed away, and as the nation mourned, Vice President Samia Suluhu Hassan stepped forward, taking power under the Tanzanian constitution. At first, she brought hope. She promised reform, dialogue, and healing for a divided nation. And to her credit, she began reversing some of Magufuli's hardline policies. For example, she reinstated opposition members who had been expelled under the previous regime. And in January 2023, she went further, lifting the ban on opposition rallies that had silenced voices for years. That decision paved the way for something no one thought they'd see again, the return of Tundu Lissu from exile. For a moment, it felt like Tanzania was turning a new page. But as the months passed, many began to wonder, was this reform real, or just another illusion of democracy? Fast forward to the present. As Tanzania's election draws closer, the atmosphere has grown tense, almost electric. Reports have surfaced of repression and intimidation by the ruling party, as President Samia Suluhu Hassan fights to secure another term. Opposition voices claim the system is being rigged before their very eyes. The Chadema party, the main opposition, has been banned from contesting after refusing to sign a controversial ethics pledge. And its leader, Tundu Lissu, once hailed as the voice of the people, now sits behind bars, facing treason charges. But amid the silence, one group has been watching, listening, waiting. Tanzania's Gen Z, a generation that has grown up online, exposed to the world, and unafraid to question authority. When they saw the news that their party's deputy leader John Heche had been detained at the border, something inside them snapped. In that moment, a spark became a wildfire. The youth rose, not just in Tanzania, but in Kenya too. Hundreds moved as one, united by anger, solidarity, and something deeper, hope. So what does this mean? Could this be the beginning of a new wave, a youth-driven revolution spreading across Africa? Or will history repeat itself, once again silencing the voices that dare to speak? Young Africans today are more educated, more connected, and more aware than any generation before them. In the year 2000, only 27% had completed high school. By 2020, that number had risen to 44%. And across the continent, Over 570 million people now use the internet. That's nearly 500 million voices, informed, engaged, and hungry for change. But here's the paradox. While education and connectivity have soared, opportunity has not. According to the World Bank, nearly 1 million Africans enter the labor market every single month. Yet fewer than 1 in 4 will find a formal job. The rest are left to hustle, struggle, and survive. Even in South Africa, the continent's most industrialized nation, the unemployment rate sits at a staggering 35%. That means 1 in every 3 people can't find work. And for the youth, that kind of hopelessness cuts deep. Dreams fade, frustration grows, and when there's no path forward, desperation takes over. Across Africa, this has become the silent crisis, where economic stagnation meets social anger. Some young people have turned to crime just to get by. Others have been lured into militant groups, chasing purpose through chaos. Many risk their lives through illegal migration, hoping the grass is greener across the sea. And then there are those who choose to fight back, through protest, resistance, and activism. For them, rebellion isn't just anger, it's survival. A demand to be seen, to be heard, to be given a future worth believing in. Armed not with guns, but with smartphones, connected not by borders, but by hashtags. Africa's Gen Z has become a digital army. They scroll, post, organize, and move faster than any government can react. And they are no longer afraid to challenge power. With just one viral post, they can shake economies, pressure politicians, and expose corruption to millions in seconds. But their courage comes at a price. Across the continent, governments are responding with force, tear gas, rubber bullets, and sometimes live ammunition. Yet every crackdown only fuels the fire. Every arrest only strengthens their resolve. The internet has given them something their parents never had, a shared voice, and the power to turn that voice into action. In 2025, that voice erupted across Africa. From Nairobi to Lagos, Accra to Dakar, tens of thousands of young people poured into the streets. They weren't fighting for power. They were fighting for dignity, for food, for jobs, for justice. They faced tear gas, batons, and bullets, but they didn't back down. Because for this generation, silence is no longer an option. And if this movement has taught the world anything, it's this. Africa's youth have stopped waiting for change. They're creating it. The movement didn't stop at the border. It spread, fast. In Madagascar, protests swelled after labor unions and civil society groups joined the streets. Crowds demanded 2 things: the resignation of President Andry Rajoelina and justice for those killed during weeks of unrest. Then came the turning point. An elite military unit known as CAPSAT moved in and seized power. President Rajoelina fled the country. The soldiers took control, suspending key democratic institutions and promising elections within 2 years. But amid the chaos, one voice stood out: the new military leader. He looked into the cameras and said something no one expected. "This movement was born in the streets," he declared, "so we must respect the demands of the youth." For the first time, a coup leader was acknowledging the power of Gen Z, the same generation once dismissed as dreamers, now shaping the destiny of a nation. In Morocco, another fire is burning. Young people are flooding the streets, demanding social justice and better public services. Their frustration runs deep, especially as the government pours billions of dollars into preparing for the 2030 FIFA World Cup. To them, it's a question of priorities. Hospitals are underfunded, schools are overcrowded, and yet, stadiums are rising from the ground. They call themselves the Gen Z 212 movement, a nod to Morocco's international dialing code and a symbol of unity. Their chants echo through Casablanca, Rabat, and Marrakesh. Education before celebration, health before fame. But the government's response was swift and brutal. Within just 6 days, over 500 protesters were arrested and several lives were lost. The message was clear: dissent would not be tolerated. But for Morocco's youth, silence is no longer an option. Analysts say these movements are all connected, not just by the internet, but by history itself. The parents and grandparents of these Gen Z protesters once fought for independence and decolonization. They dreamed of nations built on freedom, justice, and progress. But decades later, their children see a different reality, one of unemployment, inequality, and broken promises. Across Africa and the global south, the pattern is strikingly similar. Different countries, same demands. Different languages, same frustration. Viral hashtags, short and powerful slogans, all rejecting the old systems of hierarchy and control. These young people have become more than protesters. They are a barometer, measuring the depth of crisis inside the state and the pulse of a generation that refuses to give up on its future. The question now is, can this generation turn its anger into a plan? Can it move from protest to power? No one really knows, not yet. But what's already clear is that something has shifted. From Nairobi to Rabat, from Dar es Salaam to Dakar, Africa's youth have proven they can shake governments, demand justice, and force the world to pay attention. True, the challenges ahead are enormous: unemployment, inequality, corruption, and the weight of old systems. But Gen Z isn't waiting for permission to dream differently. They may not have a manifesto yet, no polished politicians, no traditional parties, but they've already changed the conversation. For them, this is no longer about surviving inside a broken system. It's about rebuilding it from the ground up. This isn't a passing wave of rebellion. It's a generational reckoning, a turning point in Africa's story. And now, the continent stands at a crossroads. The old leaders must make a choice, change, or step aside, because the future is already marching, and it's marching to the beat of Gen Z Africa.